Hello everybody, this is Snarist, and I'm back again with the third part to my Eternights Pure Phillip Challenge Run. This is Act 4. This is going to be a bit of a long video, this one, because while the Kafka Lab itself isn't all that long to beat, it's like a 12-minute section, you've then got the Delia boss fight, which is about a 6-minute section, and the last 10 minutes is me taking men on a couple of different companion quests where we've got to fight monsters in the cityscape dungeon. Now, these first couple of enemies are a little tough, especially when you can't use any of your allies' abilities. So you've got to be really careful. As I said in my last walkthrough of this game, these attacks generally have a lot of big wind-ups, so you just got to be a little bit more patient when it comes to going for the perfect dodge. But once you do, and you get your elemental burst, it's pretty easy to wear into them. Still be aware of the fact that they do several attacks in most of these combos, so you've got to make sure that you just hit them a couple times and then dodge away. So the first attack they do is going to be a triple slash, the next is going to be a single slash, and the next will be a fourth slash. That's generally the rule that you have to follow. So even if you want to bait the enemy, so they start attacking to the point where they're going to slowly make their way towards you, and then you dodge at the last attack, that could be a pretty interesting strategy that you utilize. But once you defeat these enemies here, I'm not even sure what you would call them, like what, shadow sights or something. Once you do that, you'll be able to go into the next area of the Kafka Lab, but C is going to be the only one there to back you up. And a lot of the encounters are fairly simple. Then you get to Boho, which is going to be the first like real challenge of this act. And then after that, for the most part, it's pretty smooth sailing. And then you'll have to fight what I call the Dollweave. And that's definitely an interesting fight, and then Delia herself is really quite tricky. So because of how easily exploitable a lot of these enemies are, you tend to only struggle if you get overwhelmed or if you target the wrong enemy with your attacks. But you've got a couple of projectile enemies in here, so as long as you keep an eye on them and pay attention to when they're about to throw something at you, take advantage of them by, you know... Although these baseball bat guys aren't that bad. Their first attack is pretty easily readable, their second one is a little bit rough, but their third one, you need to trust that they're not going to hit you because they have a big wind up, they jump in the air, and as they come back down, that's when you need to dodge. It's one of the longer wind up attacks in the entire game, but strangely very easily readable. So these are the only ones that are left. Go ahead and finish them off. Try not to attack projectile enemies outside of perfect dodge, because you'll find they'll either roll away and throw a projectile at you, or they'll throw projectiles at you a lot more often than they normally would. You know, I've definitely made some stupid mistakes and gotten caught out by them. So yeah, just run away from these enemies here, take out that guy with elemental burst and quickly go in the room so it pacifies everyone else. So if you notice as well, I'm skipping out all the puzzles and stuff, so I'm only focusing on the combat. Now, don't worry too much about the length of these videos, because the next act, even though there is quite a bit of fighting going on, it won't be nearly as long as this one is. And then you'll see at the end of that 5th act video all my stats. So you'll see that my light element is going to be at level 4, and that the perfect dodge is going to be highlighted as a move that I started off with. And for everyone else, everything will be pretty much set to 0 or at level 1, except for Min's rank 6 lightning ability, but it won't matter because she'll be taken away by Umbra at that point. So Boho has got some pretty easily readable perfect dodge attacks, but if you're not careful with the quick swipes he does, then he does another follow like that, like that, like that. So I got the perfect dodge on the last one there. But if you get caught by the first or second one of those attacks, he does so much damage that the last 2 attacks he does will finish you off. It'll take you down to like a third or half health, the next one will almost kill you, and the final one will finish you off. So with Boho, in a lot of cases, you do have to beat this boss, well, in one go pretty much, without getting hit. And whenever he does that lightning attack, again, dodge to the side. That way it's a lot easier to read. So I'm not even going to bother fucking with that, because I know he'll probably hit me. So he hits me once, and I was very lucky on the angle that I was, he didn't hit me again, because that wouldn't have killed me, but it would have been very close. So I'm just waiting for him to do his move until I get into it. position where I can make him more vulnerable. It'll just take one more elemental burst to finish him off. So dodge to the side there, because sometimes even when you're in the clear, it doesn't always work. Get the strike off, wait for him to come rushing at you. I got that attack. And now that his barrier's gone, okay, so now that his barrier's gone, if you notice that, he can still get interrupted with his own attacks. Whereas, you know, instead of having to attack twice and then getting ready to dodge again, he'll get interrupted. But if you get too greedy, or before you get to the end of the strike combo, it does this at random, by the way, so always anticipate it. At random times, he'll block you in the middle of your perfect dodge attack when you should be free to attack without impediment. So he'll deliberately stop you when he shouldn't be able to do that, and then he'll start attacking back at you, so you need to be very careful of that. If you get far enough into that boss fight, that's the attack that's always going to try and catch you out. So now we move to the halfway point of the Kafka Lab. There's going to be a bunch of fights that we can skip. A couple of them that we won't be able to. And unlike in my last walkthrough, we're not going to wander into any rooms by mistake and have bonus fights that we don't need to do. Now I'm a little bit worried here because I'm almost dead, and depending on how you approach this encounter here can be a little bit long. And because I don't generally fight this enemy a lot, because I've always got an elemental burst on hand, it's pretty easy for me to forget what moves he does. But you just keep abusing the spam of the projectile, and see, that would have killed me there if I didn't do that. I was very lucky to get that off. I reacted at the very last moment. I didn't expect it at all to be that fast. But once we've weakened his shield with this, it's basically over already. But see, look how far you can be away from a projectile like that and still get a perfect dodge. Isn't that crazy? I think it is. So even though it would be good to save an elemental burst for the next checkpoint, I've got some unfortunate news. I decided to use it straight away just because I didn't feel confident about fighting that enemy the way that I did. But I'm pretty sure you do get a checkpoint here. Now, I've got a weird feeling about this encounter here because I can't remember from my old footage if you can get a checkpoint right before this fight here, or if technically, if you die, you're going to have to do that entire encounter out there before. But the reason why I decided to keep the rougher version of that encounter and not the cleaner version of the encounter that I probably likely did before getting here, because my health's back to full now, because I'm fairly certain you don't get a checkpoint before this fight here. I think maybe the reason why I would have kept it in there, kept the rougher version of the previous fight, is just to show you guys, well, it doesn't matter all that much. And maybe I'm mistaking it, because again, this footage is like 2 weeks old and I've played a bunch of games since then and I've sort of forgotten, but I wonder if I get through this encounter without taking a hit. If I don't, that's probably what the reason was. But yeah, just now that you've got these enemies that can shoot projectiles, you can take advantage. Oh, there we go, I took a hit. You can take advantage of these scythe guys and they become pretty easy to deal with. But I'm still going to get rid of this thing because it's causing me too much panic, and I've already got a projectile enemy there. I find that getting rid of those enemies with the glowy hair that do the projectiles, it's just not worth putting out with their stun balls, because they'll just always seem to home in on you even though they move perfectly diagonal. But yeah, go ahead and finish this off into the next area. And apart from maybe one, possibly two essential encounters, you've really only got one more to deal with. And then you'll be able to fight the Dollweave, and then you'll move on to fight Delia, and that's the true pinnacle challenge of this entire challenge run, I think. Umbra is definitely no pushover, especially now that you can't spam your abilities, you can't spam any of your combos or sword skills, so it's harder for you to get by without getting scraped by something. But yeah, so just go straight ahead, ignore everything else. Hug the wall, take the left, go all the way around. Bunch of exposition here in the form of those orange consoles, but just move on in. There's going to be a whole lot of projectile enemies in this room here. Focus on them, take a couple of them out. Wait for the shadow scythe to spawn in. Use your elemental burst if you've got it. If not, then just keep the projectile enemies alive and keep on building up your elemental burst through perfect dodging until you get one ready, so you can just deal with this guy immediately. don't attack him while these projectile enemies are still around, because you'll get hit in the back for sure. And even if you have to start attacking early in order to get your strike combo in, you know, you don't always have to run up to the enemy. You just have to run close enough to where you can start doing the combo, and the final hit will get you the strike. Because sometimes I find with these enemies is that even though you've got the right of way to do a full combo and a strike, sometimes if you attack the enemies too much, even when they're knocked down, they can still kind of push through you. And I've been killed a couple times in this encounter here, as you can tell. So this is what I call the Dollweave. The first couple of attacks they do are pretty easy to predict, but then they start doing multiple combos that become a lot harder to predict and dodge. That was very lucky on my part. But even though this is only going to last for a couple of minutes, it felt a lot longer than that. Yeah, got the backhand. See, it took over about half my health, maybe close. So unless there's another attack they do that does a lot more damage, it's kind of hard to predict. Now, I think it's crazy looking back at that attack I just did a perfect dodge on. If you look at the trajectory of the punch, there's no way that would have hit me. So how I got a perfect dodge on that kind of scares me. That attack there, by the way, I believe it's the second to last attack she does before she does that ground slam. She does like a twist on her knuckles and then punches forward. So you gotta tempt it a little bit. It's like the fourth attack she does in her pattern. You'll get to see it a lot more clearly later on, but yeah, be very careful of that move, because that move always catches me out. So yeah, now that her barrier's down when we attack, she's not going to do any combos again. She's not going to interrupt our attacks and push us away. You know, we've got the right of way to start attacking her, and so it'll just take one more good elemental burst to do it. So now she'll block our attacks outside of perfect mode, and when she hasn't been stunned. That move right there, yeah. So even if you miss the perfect dodge on that sort of knuckle twist before she jabs you, at the very least, make sure you're on her right side, so that you've got a better chance of dodging it. So you've got the elemental burst ready, just getting the strike off just in case. And it does tons of damage now, so we're just going to go ahead and finish her off with the last punch. And now we move on to the Delia boss fight. Now she's going to start off by doing her sweep attack here. It's not going to hit you. She's going to jump up, and as she comes back down at the peak of her jump, dodge out the way, get a full combo going. Get ready for when she starts spinning the blade, dodge to the left, get a few hits in. You can get ready to dodge to the right and get it in if you want to. If you can't dodge that move though, that's okay. Just make sure you don't get hit by it. Don't get a full strike on this because she'll recover. Now she's going to do a quick slash that way, and she's going to spin the blade around and do another one. And now with this one you want to back off. And try not to roll, because what you'll find she ends up doing is the kind of trajectory of where the slashes she creates are going kind of shift. Now that move there is really hard to dodge. I don't know how I can get that. You know, I've rarely ever been able to perfect dodge that. But yeah, that's essentially what she does. The first move is that awkward swipe that's hard to dodge. The next one is the peak of the jump. The next move is this twirly blade that's really easy to perfect dodge. That part there at the end of it is a little more tricky. This here can be a little tricky to get the timing on, but as long as you can get both, it's all good. Now what you can do, because I think that that move there is the most awkward to dodge, and because you can tempt her and bait her in, so you can get close enough and run back, and then as soon as she does it, run backwards, and depending on where the lines on the ground end up, just shift your character to the left or the right to avoid it. That stinger is pretty easy to avoid. However, I do warn you, if you're far enough away from her, so stay right up to her face when she does that. If you're far enough away, or if you don't get a perfect dodge, sometimes even though you dodge perfectly to the side, and it doesn't technically hit you, is a millisecond, a fraction after it goes by you, that it still hits you. That's what I mean by this boss has awkward hitboxes, and why I don't like Delia, because a lot of her moves just can sometimes nick you on the cheap. You have to fight her for so long, and sometimes it just takes one of those moves to nick you, and before you know it, you're down to half health. So yeah, if you want my advice, get used to fighting her like this, and save your elemental burst, if you can, for when she does that move where she stabs the ground, because it's just really awkward to avoid, whereas most other attacks she does is really easily avoidable. She does that stinger move. That move there, I can almost never perfect dodge. It's hard to do. So yeah, the height of her jump, then the little blade twirl to the left, and then a blade twirl to the left again, but a lot faster. Okay, now here's where she's got the dumbass Hulk arms. If you can get the perfect dodge consistently on what she does here with the drop kicks and when she charges at you, then great. Stay close to that move and get the perfect dodge on this when she's at the height of her jump, just like the last one. That one's pretty easy to avoid. And stay close to her when she does this, because not only is it a lot easier to perfect dodge than you think, but the projectiles have a less of a chance to actually hit you. Just a couple of cheek punches there. This laser beam move is really easy to avoid. Again, keep close to her, that's kind of the trick. But stay away from her after she does it, because she'll fire at stun balls. You want to avoid that. That she does a drop kick, that one's easy to avoid. This one isn't very easy to perfect dodge. I don't know why, it's just super awkward, so save your elemental burst for then. But yeah, luckily, even though those projectiles she does where she punches and sends out waves, they're very awkward to dodge sometimes, but they're a lot easier to perfect dodge than some of her other moves, so yeah. And that's ground slam she just did after that. It was pretty much at the end of her combo. It's very awkward to dodge that one, so I'd say just stay away from it. So now that her barrier's broken, don't fall victim to this. She will block your attack, and she will... yeah, see, I like this one. That one's easier to deal with, you know, unlike her cheap bullshit from the first phase. I think her first phase is harder than this phase. It's just that I don't like how you can wear her down to almost death, and then she just gets all of her health back, plus a barrier. The other bosses that do this, they get their health back sometimes, but they don't ever get their barrier back. That's why this boss fight is so tough and why it can go on for so long. But yeah, don't fall for it. She's going to block everything you do. Try to avoid it as best you can. Now luckily if you're far enough away, you can just run past those wave projectiles she does. And if they just pass by you, treat them like projectiles and you can get a perfect dodge on. If not to do any attack seek instead, then at least to build up your elemental gauge a lot more. So I got the strike off luckily. And now I'm going to go ahead and use Seer's ability. And even in this being the version of the fight where I managed to beat Delia, I made a big mistake several times where I tried to experiment on the fly with using Seer's ice powers, because technically Delia is weak to ice. It still would have been a lot better just to use 3 of my own light element attacks because it does that much damage now. Dodge the laser beam nice and easy. By the way, even though the elemental burst comes out, if you've got the perfect dodge, try to get a strike combo in first before you do that, just so you can get maximize on damage. And so she's doing that stupid second drop kick again after the stun balls. You know, the first drop kick's pretty easy to avoid, but the second one just has really awkward hitbox. It's almost like you have to wait until she hits the ground and then dodge. It's the weirdest thing. I just don't fuck with it. But yeah, one more good elemental burst and she'll go down. I'm not going to tempt fate. I'm just going to keep passive. Wait for her to do something else that's easy to dodge. And this isn't working because that punch combo can be really nasty. You get close to her, move a little bit to the right and on a diagonal, just so you got a better chance. The kick comes in, get the dodge, get a strike combo in, and then finish her off. We'll wait for the drop kick, and then we finish her off with one more punch. And that's it. Delia's done, and the only real challenge you'll face is the tentacle fight near the end of the game, and then Umbra. But right now we're moving on to the different dungeon cityscape areas where we'll be using men and carrying her through. We're not going to use men, sorry. I'm stumbling over my words. But yeah, just one battle here, another battle a bit later on. It can be a bit elongated from the last sections because you'll face a bunch of mini-bosses and some other little enemies that can cause you a few problems. But these aren't super bad. I do think men's are still the hardest out of all of them, but you know, far from the worst thing you've done already. And you know, Delia was definitely the peak of challenge for this challenge run. Umbra is definitely a close second, and then that tentacle fight I keep talking about. But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the next video and showing you off the Umbra boss fight and some of the stuff she does in her second phase without having to deliberately slow it down compared to my last walkthrough, because I breezed by it so quickly and managed to just keep stun locking her and beating her down so she never got a chance. So yeah, other than following on screen and giving yourself an idea of what to do, I don't really know what else to say, at least not until the final video. But I mentioned before in the previous part that I'm very much open to trying different things once I get my own place when it comes to experimenting with my channel. It is a little strange how Ruby Grim Eclipse has gotten pretty decent reception, all things considered. Like, consistently I'm noticing the views on my Ninja Gaiden 4 walkthrough go up, so now most of the Master Ninja walkthrough videos are getting close to the 10 view mark. Some of them are more. Most of them are a little bit less, but they're getting up there. I think it's a good sign. You know, not everybody is going to subscribe to a channel even though they follow them, because you find a lot of stuff gets recommended anyway. I am very much aware that if you're not willing to adapt or you're not willing to try new things, then your channel isn't going to find any kind of growth. And I do want growth, but not for the sake of money and not necessarily for the sake of popularity. I just want more of this kind of content to be more accepted, or at least more searched for. Because I think people, especially YouTubers, play a game once, say it's like the best game they've ever played, and then they immediately move on to the next one because it is just a checklist to them, it is a job. I respect the hustle, but I think I kind of understood at that moment why it just felt so baffling to me when a lot of these YouTubers that are pretty mediocre at games, all things considered, I don't think they're very good at them, a lot of them, but they still manage to finish all these different games, including games that are often hailed as some of the best of a year or of a generation or whatever. But I never touch those games myself, and I never will, because I stick to the games that I want to play. But when I do stick to a game, I try to master it. I try to get really good at it. And while I won't be a master at anything to the level of some other people, like, take for example, I really love Devil May Cry, and I think one of the greatest accomplishments I actually made was beating Devil May Cry 5 on all difficulties, on all S ranks, with every character. And I even beat Bloody Palace with all characters getting S ranks, which for the most part wasn't that difficult, but that does also mean that I beat it using V. And while it definitely had its challenge, by far the one flaw that I had a trouble with was beating King Cerberus, because V's summons all go down in one hit. He takes forever to kill, and the whole fight can go on for like 15-20 minutes. It's so annoying. But in spite of all of that, you know, I understand. But yeah, it's just quite funny that several games people consider like essential to play for gamers, and I haven't touched those games, and nor will I ever, because I'd rather take just a few games I've got and do really well at them. Like I love the game so much that I want to learn it. And I think one of the earliest examples I learned of this was The Last of Us, because a lot of people hail it as their favourite game of all time, or one of their favourite games. And when you look at their history, unless you have some sort of knowledge of them playing the game off camera, well, ultimately they've only played the game once, or twice at most, and they never go above normal difficulty. They almost never. Like, Darkside Phil is a shit player at pretty much every game he plays, but even with the remaster back in the day, he bothered to bump it up to hard difficulty, so good on him for that. Somehow that's way more, you know, of a display of integrity than a lot of these other YouTubers do. But yes, of course, if I do want growth, I need to expand my horizons. I do think part of it is because Ninja Gaiden 4 was already kind of a niche game and part of a niche franchise and a niche genre. But, you know, that's why it baffles me that Ruby Grim Eclipse is doing a better with just a few videos carrying it alone than, say, the entirety of Ninja Gaiden 4. Even with the combat trials, which I surely would have thought would have gotten more attention, because as it stands, Trial 15 is the only one that's gotten good attention. Everything else barely gets a view or two. Now I understand, but hopefully with the 2 Masters DLC releases, it'll kind of bump up traffic for me. Speaking of which, I've still got the S-Rank Master Ninja walkthrough with Ryu. I don't know if I'll bother doing a commentary for that, because I wanted to show all of my footage unedited. I'm pretty sure all put together it's still less footage than all of my original walkthrough footage with Yakumo. So that's why I've considered just kind of bumping up the speed by 50% and then adding some music over the background, because yeah, everything I've had to say about Ryu and using his Ninpo, I've already said in the combat trials. I just don't know what I could do to carry the conversation for another Ninja Gaiden 4 walkthrough that goes on for maybe like 5 hours or something close to that, maybe even 6 hours. I don't know what else I'd talk about. Like if you compare my God of War 3 commentary compared to Ninja Gaiden 4, I have a lot more to talk about with God of War 3, not only because I have more history with God of War, and I still have plenty I could have talked about. Yeah, it's the opposite with Ninja Gaiden. I don't have as much to talk about because I'm not as familiar with the franchise as I am with God of War, and while I am a pretty recent fan of Ninja Gaiden, you know, I can appreciate it for what it is. So when they say that, you know, a point of criticism is that it's repetitive, I don't find that to be a big deal, because I deliberately go out of my way to make the game more difficult by playing on those higher difficulties, so I have to use more than just a few same moves and survive time and time again. But as I was saying before, I'd say hypothetically if I did stream, I'd probably want to stream on something like Kick or YouTube. YouTube seems fine, but they're also rather strict on certain things. But it definitely is the most, like, probably overall friendly thing. I don't like Twitch at all. The idea that they keep playing ads. I don't know what it's like on Kick, but I know that on Kick, once you get to a certain point, they do pay you in fairly decently for what it is. And there's not as many restrictions like there are on Twitch. And plus there's a lot of stuff that happens in the background for Twitch and how they treat some of their bigger streamers, you know, favoritism and what they can get away with. And while I would never have known about any of that, I do oftentimes find myself watching Asmongold, and so I get up to date on what's going on with entertainment, and you know, I've heard a bunch from him and through his exploration of articles and stuff about what happens with Twitch. And yeah, a lot of that shit disgusts me. So I figured, if I'm only going to have a small audience, like always and forever, I might as well have one that can, you know, properly interact with me. You know, they don't have to feel ashamed or upset or scared of getting banned for saying the wrong thing. Whereas Kick, for the most part so far, is, you know, it seems to be pretty free as far as a platform goes. I'd probably just stick with YouTube mostly, but again, it's a new thing and I'd need to experiment a bit more with OBS just so I can figure it out. One of these days I probably will, even if it's just part-time, like on the weekends. Because I find that when the weekends come around and I get a good sleep schedule going, yeah, I can just breeze through a lot of games. Because a lot of the walkthroughs I'm going to be doing are going to be on older games, and a lot of them will be older games I've played before. Just because I've already played them heaps, I want to play them again, I want to explore them again, but I want to share them with other people. And so because I've done a lot of them before, there are still a few games coming out with things I either haven't done, but I've played the games heaps, or I had played the game heaps, but the challenge run or walkthrough I'm going to do is rather difficult. And I can get more into that in some other videos, but we're coming to the end of this one. We'll be moving into Act 5 in the next video, and that'll be the end of it. The train gauntlet isn't so bad. I think probably one of the hardest parts is going to be when you've got no powers and you're running through the alleyway. And I kind of wish that I'd kept the footage where I failed for, like, you know, half an hour and I sped it all up, because it would have been a great way to show you just how annoying that section can be. And for this video and for the next one, I used to have an old intro where I had some pretty funny clips and everything, and I'll talk more about it in the next one, but I don't know why I decided to do that. I think it's because I just couldn't be bothered putting in the old Eternights intro for these videos. I decided to kind of freshen things up a little bit, add a bit of humour. But anyway, this is the end of this part. I'll see you in the finale for the next one.